And I would love to segue into our last film for today, Forensic, which is the remake of the Malayan film of the same name, starring Davina Thomas and Mamta Mohandas. Is that correct? Is that the correct pronunciation? And with that, you know, my general takeaway from this is it seemed to be like a very cheesy murder mystery of some sort where like someone dies unexpectedly and the person that we're trying to catch is always 2 3 steps ahead with not a whole lot of explanation. And like they're watching this, I could tell that this was the classic remake effect. You remake a movie that was already really good, not going to quite be as good or even better than the original. And part of me like wonders, why we're trying to remake a film that was already really good to begin with. I do know that Forensic was trending for quite a while whenever the trailers were being released and whenever the film was getting ready to release. So I know that this movie had a lot of traction, but it definitely did not land compared to the original film. So generally, if you're looking for the cheesy kind of murder mystery film that we're all used to, and some of us really like, this might work for you. But if you're looking to see something that was better than the original or even close to the original, certainly would just redirect you back to the OG Forensic rather than going to watch this one in theaters.
And Michael just got done telling you guys his thoughts on Forensic. But for anybody who didn't get a chance to watch it yet, it stars Radhika Apte and Vikrant Massey in this psychological thriller, basically about a cop, like Sub Inspector Megha Sharma, who's played by Apte, and Massey, who plays Johnny Khanna, who's a forensic officer. And they basically come together to find this serial killer. But you're like, what are they finding, right? A girl is kidnapped from a local church, and a couple hours later, she's found dead in some dump. So Megha and Johnny, both Apte and Massey, are on this like hunt to investigate the crime, find the killer, and then it seems that the killer is already aware that somebody's going to be on their trail. So what they do is they just like kidnap more schoolgirls, including the local MLA's daughter. They hold them like captive and then they murder them on their birthdays. So every time that these two who were investigating this case, like I guess they find a trail, it always leads them to the wrong suspects. And as more and more people start learning about this psychopath who's like on the run, schools just start shutting down because they're in complete panic. He seems to be targeting, or sorry, they seem to be targeting only schoolgirls. And then the cops are under this immense pressure to find the serial killer before whoever it is can strike again. But as Michael said, very cheesy, very, very cheesy. It comes off as, I know that the original Malayalam film, which was also, I guess, named the same thing, Forensic, back when it was made, was actually
1996.
1996, yeah. It was made in 1996 and it was dubbed in other languages so that other languages could also watch it. But the Hindi remake of it now, it gives one of those like, if you were to take a cult classic favorite and then you make it modern because you want to appeal to Gen Z, and then it doesn't land anymore because it doesn't have the same appeal of like the time and place and product of like the culture or the whereabouts that were happening at the original time that it was made, is exactly like that. It's literally like taking a Cinderella movie that from the original back in the day and then like modifying it for Gen Z and then recreating the movie. It did not land because it was made for the original audience back when this movie was still, or the plot of this movie was still like super new to the like psychological thriller landscape, and a hunt like this was a new concept or a new storyline for the audiences, and so they were really captivated when they're watching it. But it seems like the most basic story that they could have possibly come up with for this generation. Like nothing was new, nothing was exciting. I was barely on the edge of my seat. I was kind of like, oh yeah, like I feel like I can kind of guess what's going to come around the corner. And how do you feel, Em?
Well, I thought the movie actually flatlined after this, the first initial. I just did not understand why the character of Vikrant Massey was so happy. I just didn't understand why he was happy in murder scenes in the first place. And then, that entire chemistry between him and Radhika Apte, normally the chemistry is fire. But in this movie, they had to push the chemistry in forced kissing scenes. And I was like, you don't have to. You're in the middle of a very crazy murder mystery scenario. People are dying. Why are you even like, making out? It just seems so out of place.
And when we
But
would
I
go
have
to
to
the
tell you,
theaters, when we would
no,
go to the
it's
theaters
only in
and
Z5,
but
right?
when we would watch movies, you and I would make bets to see what would come next in the plot. Like we would be able to guess exactly what was happening. And I know for a fact that if you and I were watching this, someone would have came out of that rich because we would have been able to descriptively say what was happening next. It was very, very predictable. And like even the delivery, like even knowing what happened, the delivery was just cheesy and you were just kind of disappointed whenever like it would it would come around.
Absolutely. And there were so many changes, so many deviations from the original. The OG plot did not have the old man with dementia, for example. The entire sex change aspect of it. It was so cheesy. I mean, how insensitive are you towards that gender? How insensitive in this day and age can you become towards that third gender by introducing that entire concept without giving it another thought? The entire cop politics wasn't in the OG, and then of course there are some really good actors like Ronit Roy and Anant Mahadevan. They weren't even given the time of the day in that entire plot. I like the forensic lab, the tech parts of it, definitely. I mean, I wish they had concentrated more on that to solve the murder than running around in the forests, which just didn't make sense. The entire There were so many vibe killers in the story that you're like,
Yeah.
are we still solving the murders or are we just watching some other story for now? So on the whole, it could have been good had they just focused on one story, but they did not. They just went all over the place and just killed the story that was a cult original.
And I have this weird bone to pick with the graphics people in this movie. Why were y'all so lazy? Like, why were you guys so lazy with the forest scenes? Why were you so lazy with the background landscapes? Why were you guys so lazy with the color grading? I hate to say that because I feel like, I mean, all you really have to do is set the scenes to be like dark and monotonous, right? Because you think that's the vibe that it matches. It's literally a forensic thriller. But you're right. Vikrant Massey's character is weirdly happy, and the scenes are also weirdly happy, but schoolgirls are getting murdered. And I'm like, which intern did this? Which intern at Z5 color graded this whole movie, did the graphics for this whole movie, especially that poster too. The poster for the show, them trekking on a thumbprint or something. I was like, they had some of the like worst visual graphics I have seen come out of Z5 in a long time. And I hate to say that because Z5 is usually like killer when it comes to their motions and their angles and their cinematography, but like it didn't cut it for me in this movie. It did not. It's like they basically spent the entire budget getting the actors and then forgot to make sure the sets looked as good, like to match the vibe or to like put the audience in the mood completely. Like I just didn't think anything matched.
It is so easy to make murder thrillers and scary stories in Missouri because the mountains and the fog, and you can easily make a really nice murder thriller in a place like Missouri. But if you can't, then there's something really wrong with you.
Why was the mood light? I just can't get over why was the mood lighting so bright all the time? Like you're in a forest. Where is this lighting coming from? That's like the easiest problem to solve. No. We do recommend you spending your time on Upload, but if you want to make those decisions on your own, head on over to Daisies.live to read our full reviews. And with that, we bid you farewell until next week. Thanks, everyone.